it's really, really a great privilege to be having this conversation with you as regards some of the effects this pandemic would have on Nigerians post COVID-19. I remember watching a show, one of those shows on CNN, and then there was a book review there. This writer sent his book to different publishers before the pandemic, but they felt he wrote about the pandemic, but they felt that it wasn't realistic, so nobody picked the book at the time. But now it's one of those books that are selling really fast during this pandemic because it's so relevant right now. So what do you think are some of the stories that we can write from this experience?
There's so many stories, all you need to do is look. I think that filmmaking is going to be changed remarkably. I was reading a document in particular, and from Hollywood, they released some guidelines, on how to move ahead when they start filming. And it's really terrible because a lot of things are going to change. You can't shoot big crowd scenes anymore. Your actors are going to maintain, distance, social distance from each other, and just a lot of things, the limits to the number of people you can have on set. A lot of this is really, really going to change. So it's just adapting your stories or your films to and include, social distance. This pandemic is not a background that just comes and goes the way that we thought it would be, like a footnote. It's something that we are going to be living with for a while, and it's changed the world, So when we start seeing it reflecting in film, in books, in stories, it's not something that is so highfalutin or so out of the ordinary anymore. We're living with it. So I think that it's going to reflect in our stories. For us here in Nigeria, we don't really do big sets, big shoots, and I think we might be able to work around it by the time we, start going back to work. And definitely, it's going to reflect in the stories that we tell in terms of, how your characters interact with the world around them. You can choose to do before COVID, you can choose to do after COVID, but it's going to be hard to just ignore COVID. It's not going anywhere.
One of those producers who planned on making films from monologues. So he sends you your script and you film it from your house. More like what I think MTV Sugar is doing with their new online series. So he sends you your script and you do a monologue. But this other guy says, there's this battle for attention, like everybody's creating right now. So there's that battle for attention so you have to get it right. So what are your thoughts about film now? The people now thriving in different industries have to thrive with innovation, have to use innovation to thrive. So it's no longer business as usual, but you have to now find new ways, better ways to tell stories, and everybody's genuinely watching now.
I think monologues are in now. Monologues will be in for a while because it's the bare basics, But in order to trying to avoid the case where everybody's doing the same thing, there's going to be a burst of, or there may be, who knows, a burst of creativity now. Everybody is going to be forced to, just sit down and, put one or two things down on paper or on the laptop or whatever. And I imagine there's going to be a rush after when, we're allowed to go back to work for content. There's still a lot of films, a lot of books, a lot of content that have been paused, because of COVID, and we might want to finish up on those. So we need to finish that and put those out too before we now go into the stage of, starting to create new content in a post-COVID world. Of course, things are going to be different. I don't know how it's going to be yet, It's just for us to figure out how to deal with the virus first, and then begin to see, what how we'll roll out the content, entertainment content that will come out of COVID. Already, we are looking at alternative sources of distribution. Online is big now. We see even theater shows. Last night, Moremi was on YouTube. Everybody's. We before we didn't think we'd be watching theater on YouTube. So I think more interesting is going to be distribution. We begin to see how we'll roll out the content, entertainment content that will come out of COVID. Already, we are looking at alternative sources of distribution. Online is big now. We see even theater shows. Last night, Moremi was on YouTube. Everybody's. We before we didn't think we'd be watching theater on YouTube. So I think more interesting is going to be distribution. What studios, in terms of films, how are studios going to figure out? Are people going to want to go back to theaters? Especially in the next year or two. And even if the theaters are open, are people, going to want to huddle closely, to experience theater, experience art? So the way that we consume content in terms of distribution is going to change. Netflix, the likes of Netflix and other Amazon Prime, they're having the time of their life right now. But there's even so much that they can show in terms of old content. At some point, people will need to be refreshed with, new stuff. And I think everybody is on an equal footing in that regard. So it'll be interesting. I don't have any clues, as to where it will go, except to say that I envisage smaller movies. Maybe the blockbusters might not be as frequent as we hoped. I mean, the ones that have been announced will have gone to set, will want to finish up. But in terms of new content, I think it will be smaller, intimate sets. You mentioned monologues, yes. But yeah, I think we're going to go back to those days of making, I don't want to say art house movies, but I want to say managed films where you're managing your cast, you're managing your sets, you're managing your crew, and my guess is it will take a while before people will be ready for the big splash, because there's some theaters who are saying they won't even open even if they have the chance now till they have a film or they have a major product to push. Studios don't want to push a major product until they are sure that people will turn out in numbers,
But speaking about things that some people know or some people are envisaging that could change, I believe you also read the report by the Red Culture Intelligence team, and then they came up with a few points. Let's talk about a rising interest in home cooking. What do you think about that? Because I also read the Bloomberg report last week. The lockdown was relaxed in Wuhan, China, but businesses in Wuhan were complaining that people were not coming to the restaurants to eat.
Yeah, and you blame them. It's a post, I don't want to say apocalyptic world, but it's looking like it. And for people like me now, I have been at home for the past 6 weeks. I'm lucky I'm at home with family. So they do the cooking and I just show up, when it's ready. But we've been doing more of that than we were doing before, because before everybody in the morning, everybody goes to work. You don't come back till it's night. Sometimes you don't cook anything till the weekend. So, but now, every day, the more you're at home, the more you want to eat. And so for those that can afford that, there's going to be a lot of that. But there's also those people who cannot afford to cook and will always depend on eating out. It might not, when we say eating out, we're talking of different kinds of structures of restaurants. So the the big restaurants, the major ones might suffer it, but I don't know that the mama put, on the street will see a downturn in her businesses, because people will always, patronize her as long as she's there to provide the services. But in terms of structured, fancy eating out, yes, there's going to be a lot of mistrust about going outside in the first.
All right, fantastic. I like it. So another point raised is more global and regional tech innovation. So that's bringing it home to Nigeria. So I had a conversation with Debola Williams, the CEO of Red for Africa, and he says one of the points he raised was that for many young people, that there's going to be more need, a need for more entrepreneurs, a need for more people to innovate, a need for more people to collaborate and create stuff regionally. And so what are your thoughts about that?
Usually, ideally, businesses or
entrepreneurship. Do you think there'll be a rush for entrepreneurs after this?
Not so fast, I don't think so. I think what we'll see is more of already existing entrepreneurs or businesses repurposing their business to things that the new world order would need. So, as opposed to new people rushing in to start businesses, I think what will happen will be people who have started businesses before, just trying to figure out how to be relevant, in these times. If you were doing something that has been wiped out by COVID, you want to think of doing something else that people need at the moment. So that's where I foresee, that some change is going to happen. And of course, everywhere in the world, entrepreneurship tries to fill a need. You identify gaps, and then you try to plug it, with your product or with your services, and you hope to make some regular income out of it. And because the world has changed, it's one of those. This is one of those events where it's happening right before your eyes. It's happening fast, but it's happening, and you are there in the midst of it. You don't know how gigantic it is, probably because you are living through it. But in the future, when people write about it, they're going to be like, wow, you guys really lived through, something this big. So there's going to be a lot less money going around, because a lot of people are just going to trying to recover from what they went through. Big tech businesses now, or tech services, you see that there's going to be less human interaction and more tech. People are, why should I come to your studio if we can do an Instagram, live? Why should I come to your office if we can do a Zoom meeting or whatever, Microsoft, whatever, So it's just figuring out what people need and staying ahead of the curve as much as you can.
All right, fantastic. I like that you touched the last point I was going to raise, which is a change in corporate culture. I believe that you're a medical doctor as well, as a writer, I believe.
Fair enough.
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. So what are some of the changes you've seen in the medical sector during this period, being a medical doctor?
Changes?
Yes. So changes and just, and linking it with corporate culture.
Well, doctors have to show up, to the physically anyway, regardless. So especially those who are on the front line, that hasn't really changed. What has changed, I guess, would be protection. So if Ebola taught us how to wash our hands, more frequently, COVID is teaching us how to be more careful generally, because this is not just a case of washing hands. This is more a case of, yes, you need to wash your hands, you need to maintain social distance, you need to, try not to touch your face and all that. But you also need to treat the patient like they're a person. you're not going to say, oh, because I'm dressed up in this protective equipment. Patients are also going to want that human interaction, from you. So it's a delicate balancing act for us. That's changing a lot, how doctors relate with patients, because you want to protect yourself for you and for your family, and also so you can attend to many more patients, because once you get infected, you are out. More careful, generally. Be more careful. And, there's only so much you can do, but, as much as you can do that, we're trying to do that. So I think it's going to raise teachers to be more careful and more particular about our protecting not just ourselves but also the patients or the clients.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilfred Okiche. This was a really, really fun conversation.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right.
Ciao.
That was